Today I've got 9 romance recommendations for you, and the theme is language barrier. So some of these books are alien romances where there is an actual language barrier where the two lead characters don't speak the same language and they need to kind of figure out how they're going to communicate. And some of these books have some sort of disability representation in them where one of the characters may be deaf or is unable to speak for one reason or another, and I'll explain more as we go through. So the first recommendation I've got for you today is Neva, Seduce, Scot by Maya Banks, and this one is an historical romance and it's book 1 of the Montgomery and Armstrong series, of which currently there's only 2 books in this series. Now we're following Evelyn Armstrong and Graham Montgomery, and basically this is a situation where it's based in the Scottish Highlands, and the Armstrongs and Montgomerys are basically enemy families, so they're rival families and they've been sort of at war for a long time. And it's all come to a bit of a head, and basically at the start of this book the families are given a bit of an ultimatum, and it's suggested that they unite their families through marriage. Now Graham Montgomery is the head of his clan, and obviously he really wants a bride that he's going to be suitable, that's going to produce offspring, so he's got an heir. But the woman that is offered to him as his future bride is Evelyn, like I said, and it's believed in the families that there is something wrong with Evelyn, and he is basically then seemingly saddled with Evelyn. Now Evelyn had a riding accident when she was younger, and this accident has led to her being deaf, and as a result she has very much withdrawn into herself and deliberately sometimes makes her family believe that she's not able to communicate properly with them, and she's doing this for a number of reasons, but essentially it means that they think that she has been too badly injured in this accident, and therefore there is now something wrong with her. But nevertheless they want to put her forward for this marriage with Graham, and of course he's a bit unhappy about this because he's like, how am I supposed to have a true marriage with somebody who you know, who's had an accident? It's clearly something wrong with her, and therefore I'm not the kind of man to force myself onto this kind of person, and how am I ever going to have an heir? And he feels like this really is kind of a bit of a setup to bring his family down. But nevertheless he is forced into this marriage with Evelyn and takes her back to his keep, where he starts to realise that she is not quite as damaged as everyone thought she was, and he discovers very quickly that in fact she is deaf. But she is an extremely intelligent woman, has mastered the art of lip reading, so she knows exactly what's going on, when it's going on, and is really choosing not to communicate with other people. And one of the main reasons she did this is because she was previously arranged to be married to another man who she absolutely detested, did not want to marry him. So she really played on her disability basically to ensure that her family wouldn't force her into this marriage. Now of course when she goes with Graham she is instantly attracted to him, and in fact one of his qualities is that he has got a very deep voice, so deep that it resonates when he speaks, and she is able to feel him speaking, and so she is quite in awe of Graham, and is completely enraptured whenever he is speaking. And like I say, Graham quickly discovers that Evelyn is more than capable of being a complete wife to him, and starts to develop feelings for Evelyn as Evelyn starts to develop feelings for Graham. So next up we have Broken Whispers by Neva Altaj, and this one is a mafia romance, and it's book 2 in her Perfectly Imperfect series, which is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't picked these books up yet, I highly recommend that you do. Now in this one we're following Mikhail, and he is a Russian mafia hero. He's also a single father and quite a scarred hero. He has had some damage to his face and he wears an eye patch over one eye. Meanwhile our heroine is an Italian mafia princess. She's a ballerina, but her career is coming to an end. And previously she'd had a car accident that left her without the ability to speak, so she is a non-speaking heroine. However, she is able to communicate through American Sign Language. Now, the Russian and Italian mafia families are at war with each other, and so of course this is an arranged marriage between this couple to unite the families. Bianca is put forward by her father as someone who, you know, like offered up as a bride, if you like, from the Italian side, and then the Russians kind of all sit around the table deciding who's going to take this woman as their bride, and Mikhail in fact volunteers for this opportunity because secretly he's actually been watching her as she performs in the ballet and has had a thing for her for quite some time. So he is delighted to get the opportunity to you know, make Bianca his wife. Now Bianca is scared of Mikhail at first. She's heard some quite scary things about him. He is you know, not the prettiest man to look at, and you know, he's a Russian mafia hero, so his reputation is definitely going to be preceding him. But what we found out is Mikhail is a really big softie inside. He really cares for Bianca, so it's a really, really sweet romance between them. And also Mikhail is hiding a secret because he actually knows American Sign Language, and at first he doesn't share this information with Bianca, but very quickly she figures out that he can absolutely understand her when she's signing, and of course when this secret is revealed they're able to communicate much more freely together. So it was a really interesting read from that perspective as well. They're moving from a mafia romance to a sci-fi romance, and we have got Fall by Claire Kent, and this is book 3 in the whole series. So in this one we're following Lena. She is our heroine, and she is kind of a smuggler. So she has a spaceship and she smuggles things, and one day she is caught by you know, the space government, the government in space. They don't take too kindly to this, and one of their ways to punish people is to kind of like drop them off on planets without any means to escape, and kind of that is their punishment. And so at the start of this book, Lena is kind of dropped off onto this Stone Age planet where she's left stranded, and she comes face to face with a group of cavemen. Now unfortunately when she first lands she is discovered by kind of like an evil group of cavemen, but she is then rescued by another group of cavemen who kind of come along, and one of the people in this this goodie group, if you like, is a hero called Roan. But nevertheless he is still a caveman, and he recognises her as a female and takes her back to his camp. Now basically in their kind of society, until you find a mate, then you're kind of a bit of you know, not an outcast as such, but you kind of have to look after yourself, and especially if you're female it's very hard obviously for you to have shelter, safety and food, and so she realizes that her best chance of survival here is to you know, make herself available to Roan so that he will take her as his mate, and therefore will look after her, give her shelter, like I say, and go hunting for her so she's got food, and basically keep her safe from any other bad caveman that might want to take her. Now because he is a caveman, obviously his ability to communicate is fairly limited to start off with. They don't have a fully formed language, and even if they did they wouldn't speak the same language as each other. So Lena really has to kind of you know, figure out kind of what's going on, and then try to communicate through sort of like signs, and you know, almost like a game of charades, like trying to figure out what each other is meaning behind some of their actions. This is a fairly short read. It's a very sweet romance, and if you like sort of sci-fi romances or where there is language barriers like this, then it is a good one to get stuck into. Sticking on the kind of the alien theme, if you like, the next one is Barbarian Mine by Dixon, and this one is book 4 in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. Now obviously there are some other books in this series that also have language barriers, particularly book 1, because what this is basically based on is that there's a group of human women who have been abducted from Earth. They are in transit, presumably to be sold into some sort of sex slavery in the galaxy or for other nefarious means, but their ship crash lands on this blue planet which they call not Huss. And then obviously then they encounter the natives on the planet, these blue aliens. So at first in book 1 there is still definitely a language barrier. They can't speak to each other, but later on they kind of find this old very advanced spaceship on the planet which allows them to kind of like download information into their brain, and then they can basically speak the same language. By the time we get to book 4 though, and this is the one I want to kind of recommend, is we're following Harlow and Rook in this one, and Harlow is one of our human women. She hasn't found a mate yet. and she's out looking for sort of supplies. She's sort of gathering supplies that they need. When she comes across Rook, or Rook comes across her. Now Rook is a blue alien. He is the same species as the other natives on the planet, but when he was a little boy, he due to some circumstances with his father, he left sort of the village where they all were, and has been living very much on his own, very isolated for the rest of this time. So he has never learned the language, and he obviously doesn't now have this download in his head either from this special ship. So when he first bumps into Harlow, all he knows is that he starts to resonate for her, which basically means that she is his mate. But he cannot communicate with her, and so he kind of panics because he's never seen anyone that looks like her before. He just has this great, like, this feeling that, you know, they need to be together. So as any good sort of barbarian would do, he whacks her over the head with his stick, and then drags her back to his cave. Now, of course, when she wakes up, she also starts to resonate with him, and she knows what this means because she's seen, you know, her other human friends go through this. But she also wants to get back to where she's come from, because a couple of the people that she was with are potentially in danger, and she, you know, needs to go and help them. But Rook is adamant that he's not going to take her back. Of course, they can't 100% communicate very well, so again they start to use signs and words to represent things, and slowly over time Harlow starts to teach Rook her language, and they start to communicate with each other. And then basically she ends up relenting and kind of going with him, and where they spend quite a long time in peace together, living in his cave near the sea. Until basically she becomes pregnant and quite ill, and it becomes very, very necessary for Rook to take her back to the tribe to see if they can save her. So then we're going back to another Mafia romance, and this is The Enforcer by Renee Rose. This is book 3 in the Chicago Bratva series, and we are following Oleg in this one, who is the enforcer for this particular Bratva, and he is also non-speaking hero because, and I thought this was quite unique because I hadn't seen it before, but essentially in a past employment with another kind of mafia person, shall we say, they cut out his tongue so that he wouldn't be able to spread any of their secrets, so since then he has done very little to learn how to speak without his tongue, and also communicates only when absolutely necessary through text message. So Oleg is this very big, brooding, scary looking hero. He's the enforcer, so again his reputation precedes him, and he's not very social because he, you know, doesn't communicate very well with other people, and he doesn't make any effort to either. So he's quite standoffish and isn't really too interested in getting to know the other people in this mafia. However, they all, you know, really like him, really respect him and everything. Now, he's had his eyes on this lady called Story, and Story is a musician. She is a guitarist and singer in a band who plays in a club nearby, and Oleg religiously every Saturday goes to see her play, and he's her silent fan, if you like. Now, Story's obviously noticed him, but they've never spoken, but she knows that he's always in the audience, and they've kind of built up this sort of rapport with each other despite never really having had a conversation. And then about a year after kind of this Oleg sort of been soft stalking, I'd say it's a soft stalker kind of romance, he happens to be leaving the club one night, and Story doesn't have a lift, and he offers to drive her home. And then basically when he's dropped her off and she's back in her apartment, he then gets set upon by some enemies of his, pretty much left for dead. And then when Story wakes up the next morning, discovers that he's injured, she takes him back to her apartment and nurses him back to health, and obviously very quickly realises that he can't speak, but is a fantastic encouragement for him. So when they start to have this relationship together, and their feelings grow between each other, she very much encourages him to learn how to communicate with other people and sort of come out of his shell a little bit. And so I really like to see that as well. And I just, like I say, I thought it was kind of quite a unique situation that Oleg found himself in, and how the heroine helped him to become more communicative with his friends, which I really enjoyed. Next we've got Sick Heart by J.A. Huss, and this is book 1 in the Sick World series. Now both characters in this one are non-verbal, and it's absolutely through choice. So we are following Kurt von Breda. He is an underground MMA fighter, and we have Anya. Now both of them are in a very difficult situation. In fact, you could say they're basically slaves, and therefore they have very little choices in the world. So they've both chosen to be non-verbal. They don't speak because it's one of the things that they can control for themselves, the only little bit of power they have. So this is a very interesting book because there's not a lot of dialogue throughout this whole book, but it's very atmospheric, it's very, very dark romance, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it was a great demonstration how people can absolutely communicate a lot without actually saying anything at all. So like I said, this is a dark romance and underground MMA fighter kind of romance, because essentially Kurt von Breda is a sort of a prize fighter, if you like, and he is owned by like an individual who puts him into the ring to fight, and these fights are to the death. And the idea is that when they've you know, fought a certain number of fights and lived to tell the tale, they'll eventually be free. So I think they need to fight something like 40 fights and survive, and then their masters will release them. Now Kurt von Breda is the best of the best. He has won more fights than anyone else, and he's only 1 or 2 fights away from earning his freedom. Every time he fights and wins though, he does get himself a prize, and usually it's in the form of a woman, because basically what his owner is trying to do is to make sure that he breeds. He has to breed with women, and then basically Kurt von Breda's offspring are then trained to fight from children to kind of replace these other fighters in the ring. And because he's got such good fighting stock, if you like, such good genes, then he is kind of highly sought after for this kind of very dark breeding program that they've got going on. Anya meanwhile is a slave. She is sent there to kind of tend to the fighters, and you know, make sure that everyone has what they need. And at the point where Kurt von Breda is fighting his last fight, Anya is kind of given to him as a prize, but of course they want to try and rig this fight, and they give the other fighter a weapon, and Anya basically ends up in the middle of this fight and kind of saves Kurt von Breda's life, manages collectively to kill this other person, and then he escapes with her on a helicopter and goes back to this island where it was that he was brought up and trained. And so from there, they're now in close proximity together on this island. Neither of them speak to each other, but he very much makes his feelings known, and he starts and he continues his kind of like rigorous training program and forces her to train and fight as well. Now what I would say about this one, it is dark. When I read it, it was quite a harrowing read, but it was absolutely fascinating, and if it sounds of interest to you, then I would definitely recommend giving it a go. So back to something a little bit lighter and a very recent read for me, and was the inspiration for this video, and that is When the Earl Met His Match by Stacy Reid. This is another historical romance, and it's book 4 in the Wedded by Scandal series. Now in this one we have our hero Hugh, who is the future Earl of Albury, and he is also a non-verbal hero who mainly communicates through writing things down or through sign language. And then we have Lady Phoebe Maitland, who is our heroine in this one, and she is the daughter of a duke. Now when this one starts, Hugh lives with his family in Scotland, and Phoebe is basically visiting Scotland with her family. They kind of go there for holidays. She is out with her maid, and basically this peculiar girl comes up to her with a dog and basically hands this dog over to her. And what we discover is that Hugh is the owner of this dog. He is very sick on his deathbed. The doctor doesn't think he's going to make it, and he's begged his sister to take his loyal dog to a new home where he's going to be loved and looked after. And the sister gives this dog to Lady Phoebe, and Lady Phoebe goes on her way back to London. However, Hugh does not die of this sickness and fully recovers. As a result, his father is encouraging him to get married because you know, the current Earl of Albury is a very old man. He is likely to pass away soon. He has a heart condition, and he wants Hugh to marry well into society and then retake his kind of place in the London, the London scene in the Ton. The thing is, there's a little bit of scandal there because it's kind of well known that Hugh isn't actually the biological child of the Earl, you know, his mother was definitely having an affair with multiple people. In fact, his siblings might not be the Earl's children either. However, the Earl absolutely loves his children, and Hugh is absolutely loved by his father. And so, like I say, he's encouraging him to get married. So he doesn't want to go down to London to enter the, you know, to go through the whole rigmarole of courting someone. So he decides he's going to put an ad in the paper and appeal to a lady of high standing to become his wife. Now Phoebe sees this in the paper and is sort of a little bit scandalised, a little bit put out by this advert, and she decides she's going to write to him to kind of put him in his place and tell him this is not how one procures themselves a wife. And then from there they then have a bit of back and forth with you know, become kind of pen pals and start to get to know each other a little bit better. Meanwhile, Phoebe's family, in particular her father, really wants her to get married again into a very, very important household. Like I said, her father is a duke and he wants someone who is absolutely worthy of his daughter, and he really wants her to marry this much older guy, and Phoebe really doesn't want to marry him. She wants to marry for love. Now, she has been kind of seeing this Viscount for a while. It's been a long time friend and also her piano teacher, and one thing leads to another, and she decides that maybe if she ruins her reputation then she won't have to marry this older guy, and she ends up having sex with the piano teacher. Of course, when the piano teacher goes to her father to ask for a hand in marriage, the father is absolutely scandalised and says no way and pays him off. So he pays him £20,000 to be rid of him. But it's not long before Phoebe finds out she's pregnant and then has to go and tell her mother. And her mother again is horrified and wants to cart her off to the country, force her to have the baby and then give it away so that she can then come and pretend that none of that bad stuff happened, and she can go on and marry the old guy that they want her to marry. Of course, Phoebe is not going to let this happen. She's absolutely going to protect her child. She wants to keep it, and so she realises her only opportunity is to flee to Scotland into the arms of Hugh and beg him to marry her. And of course, when she gets there and Hugh finds out she's pregnant, he is not going to turn her away, because he absolutely understands how important it is for, you know, a potential illegitimate child to be claimed and loved, even if it's not by the biological father. And so I really, really liked how this played out. It was such a feel-good book. It was one of the few historicals I've actually really, really enjoyed. And it was great to see, you know, Hugh reunited with his dog, and how Phoebe very quickly started to learn how to use sign language so she could communicate with Hugh more efficiently, and I really did enjoy that. Next up then we have God of Ruin by Rina Kent, and this one is book 4 in the Legacy of the God series. This is a dark college romance. It's mafia adjacent because the main female character Mia is kind of part of the Russian mafia, and Landon King, who is our hero, is you know, from quite an influential family in the UK, and they are not afraid to do some dark deeds either, while strictly not mafia. But Landon is also a bit of a psychopath, so he's a psychopath male character who absolutely sets his sights on Mia, our heroine. And it's Mia who is a non-verbal heroine. She is kind of selectively mute because of some trauma that happened to her when she was younger, and now again she communicates through sign language. Now Landon becomes very obsessed with Mia straight away. He's a sculptor, so he's basically goes to college for art, and he is a very, very talented sculptor, but he feels like he's not really producing his best work until he meets Mia, who kind of becomes his muse, and he forces her to be with him so that he can continue to pump out some amazing sculptures. You know, at first Mia is there to kind of put Landon in his place. He has done some horrible things in books 1 through to 3. He is a bit of a villain in the other stories, and Mia wants to get retribution for her family, and it's one of the reasons why she gravitates towards Landon in the first place, because she's determined to make his life a misery. Except, of course, when they start to get to know each other, spend more time together, she starts to fall under Landon's sway, shall we say. And finally then we have Pretty Little Sinners by Anna Fury, which is book 3 in the Northern Rejects series. Now this is mainly an Omegaverse series, and it's a spin-off from the Alpha Compound series that she first wrote. So as well as this being an Omegaverse, it's also kind of a dystopian shifter romance, and an MMF romance. We are following Julia, Cassian and James, and Julia is deaf in this one, and she communicates through sign language. Now I really like the setup to this kind of series, but what we find out is humanity was going along just fine as we know it until this virus breaks out, which transforms some of the men into alphas. Now when they first become alphas, they become very you know, enraged, do a lot of damage, look like snarling kind of hideous beasts, and therefore everyone is afraid of them. Now of course this is only part of their transition, and when they're fully transitioned, then they although they are now much bigger and stronger and have special abilities, they're actually not bad people at all and don't want to hurt anyone. However, the government obviously are scared. They round people up, they start to kidnap alphas, capture them to experiment on them and figure out what is going on. And so over the course of the Alpha Compound series, we start to figure out what is going on, how this virus happened, what is being done to these alphas that are being rounded up. And also with the group that we've seen, they've obviously all been matched up with their fated mates, their Omegas, and we start to learn more about this world. Then when we get to the Northern Reject series, basically the alphas have been forced to move to Canada, and now they are kind of living together in this kind of community in Canada. But there are various warring alpha packs, so there is not only conflict with the government and these you know, these captured alphas, but also other alpha packs are potentially a risk to their group as well. So at the start of this book, Julia, who is our deaf heroine, she is kind of matched up, mated with James. However, there's definitely something missing in their relationship. So they're very, very happy together, but they both feel that something is missing, or someone is missing. And that is where Cassian comes into the situation, because Cassian is actually from a rival alpha group. However, their leader is not a great guy, and Cassian is starting to have doubts about being in this particular alpha pack. And in fact, when the leader of his pack goes too far, with what is happening, Cassian decides that he's going to kind of defect and come and live with the Northern Reject pack, and he's not sure what he's going to do. He's not sure if he's going to stay or not, or if he's going to go off and form his own pack. But Julia and James realise that they need Cassian to complete their trio, if you like, and it's Cassian that they want. And Cassian is very reluctant at first to be with them. However, he is very attracted to both of them, and it's not too long before they convince him that they should all be together. Okay, so there we have it. That's 9 romance recommendations where the characters have a potential language barrier that they need to overcome. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Now in this one we have our hero Hugh, who is the future all. We have our hero Hugh is the. So the first recommendation I've got for you today is never. Hello, welcome to another episode of What Helen Reads. Another episode. So today, right, we're talking language barriers, okay. Let's explain that one a little bit better. Should we start again?